A nurse pulled out her grandfather's old whistle to entertain a Mafia boss's deaf son, just trying to make him smile. The sound that came out changed everything. The boy heard it, and his father wasn't letting her leave until he understood why. The crystal chandelier cast fractured light across Alessandro Vitali's face as he stood in the hospital's new pediatric wing, surrounded by people who smiled too wide and laughed too loud. He hated these events, but appearances mattered in his world, perhaps more than blood itself. Mr. Vitali, your generosity will change countless lives, the hospital director gushed, pumping his hand with rehearsed enthusiasm. Alessandro's smile never reached his eyes. Children deserve a chance, don't they? What he didn't say, even mine, who will never hear his own father's voice. 6-year-old Luca stood beside him, small hand gripping Alessandro's jacket. The boy's dark eyes tracked the crowd with the intensity of someone who had learned to read the world through sight alone. 2 bodyguards flanked them like shadows, Marco on the left, Vincent on the right. Always watching. Always ready. Alessandro glanced down at his son. Luca's face held that familiar, distant expression, locked in his silent world. The doctors had thrown around words like congenital sensory neural hearing loss and permanent nerve damage, fancy terms that all meant the same thing. His son would never hear a gunshot, a warning, or the word run. In Alessandro's world, that was a death sentence waiting to happen.
Daddy.
Luca signed, his small fingers moving with practiced precision. Tired. Alessandro nodded and signed back. Soon. Mr. Vitali. A photographer rushed forward. One picture with your son for the hospital newsletter? Before Alessandro could refuse, Marco's phone buzzed. The bodyguard's expression darkened as he leaned close. Boss, we have a situation. The boy's nanny. She's not responding. Car accident on the bridge. She's fine, but she can't make it. Alessandro's jaw tightened. He had exactly 45 minutes of speeches, handshakes, and fake gratitude ahead of him. He couldn't leave. Couldn't appear weak by abandoning his own charity event. But Luca was already exhausted, overwhelmed by the crowd he couldn't hear but could feel pressing in. Find someone, Alessandro said quietly.
Now.
Mia Chen was 3 hours into her shift when the hospital administrator appeared in the corridor, looking frantic. Mia, I need a favor.
It's
unusual. Mia looked up from her charts, exhausted. Her 12-hour shift came after dropping her son Danny at her neighbor's apartment because she couldn't afford after-school care this month. The rent was late. Again. Danny's school supplies were purchased on a credit card she couldn't pay off. The word no felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. What kind of favor? Mr. Vitali, the donor, his son's caretaker, had an emergency. We need someone to watch the boy for an hour. Maybe less. He's deaf, very well behaved, just needs supervision in the quiet room while his father finishes the event. Mia's stomach dropped. She'd seen Alessandro Vitali from a distance, the sharp suit, the cold eyes, the men who moved around him like a military unit. Everyone on staff whispered about him. Generous donor. Powerful connections. Don't ask questions. I'm not a babysitter, I know, but you're the only staff member with pediatric training available right now who isn't actively with a patient.
Please, Mia.
1 hour. The administrator's eyes held something between desperation and warning. Mia thought of Danny's school fees. Overdue by 3 weeks. The principal's stiff email. We understand times are difficult, but...
Fine.
1 hour. Luca sat in the small room adjacent to the event hall, coloring with mechanical precision. Each stroke of crayon stayed within the lines. His bodyguard stood outside, visible through the glass door, their bulk blocking most of the light. Mia entered with a gentle smile, moving slowly, so she wouldn't startle him. She'd worked with deaf children before during her pediatric rotation. The key was patience and presence. She waved to catch his attention. Luca looked up, those dark eyes assessing her with unsettling intelligence for a 6-year-old. Mia signed slowly. Hello. I'm Mia. I'm here to keep you company. Luca's eyebrows rose slightly. He signed back. You know sign language? A little. I learned in school. He studied her for a moment, then returned to his coloring. Mia sat across from him, noting his slumped shoulders, the tension in his small frame. This wasn't just a tired child. This was a lonely one. 20 minutes passed in comfortable silence. Luca drew what looked like a fortress with tiny figures inside. Mia watched, her heart aching at how meticulously he worked, as if perfection could protect him. Then his crayon rolled off the table. As Mia bent to retrieve it, her hand brushed the pocket of her scrubs. She felt the familiar shape of her grandfather's whistle, the one she'd found in his belongings after he died last year. She carried it like a talisman, though she'd never blown it. It felt too precious, too fragile. But looking at Luca's isolated expression, she made an impulsive decision. She pulled out the wooden whistle. It was small, about the length of her palm, carved with intricate swirling patterns that caught the light. The wood was dark, almost black, and smooth from years of handling. Mia held it up, miming blowing into it with exaggerated expressions, trying to make Luca smile. He watched her with mild curiosity, nothing more. Why not? She thought. He can't hear it anyway. Mia brought the whistle to her lips and blew. The sound that emerged wasn't like any whistle she'd ever heard. It was low and high at once, a frequency that seemed to vibrate not through the air, but through her bones. The room's fluorescent lights flickered. The water in a nearby glass rippled. And Luca's head snapped toward her like he'd been struck. His eyes went wide, terrifyingly wide. His mouth opened in a silent gasp. His hands flew to his ears, then dropped, trembling, to the table. "Oh my God," Mia whispered, lowering the whistle.
Did
you hear that?" Lucas stared at the whistle like it was alive. Slowly, shakily, he reached toward it. The door burst open. Alessandro Vitali stood in the doorway, his face drained of color. Behind him, both bodyguards had their hands inside their jackets, on their weapons. Mia realized with horror. "What did you do?" Alessandro's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of a threat. "What the hell did you just do to my son?" Luca turned to his father and signed something frantic, his small hands flying. Alessandro's expression shifted from fury to shock to something Mia couldn't identify. Alessandro's voice cracked. "He says he heard something. My son says he heard something." The whistle suddenly felt heavy in Mia's hand, like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Alessandro's eyes locked onto it, then to her face.
"Who are you?"
"Who sent you?" "I'm nobody. I'm just a nurse. I was just trying to." "Show me." Alessandro crossed the room in 3 strides. "Blow it again."
"Now."
Mia's hands shook as she raised the whistle. She glanced at Luca, whose face held desperate hope, the first real emotion she'd seen from him. She blew. The sound filled the room again, that impossible frequency. And this time, Luca didn't just react. He smiled. A pure, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. Then he started to cry. Alessandro dropped his knees and pulled his son into his arms, signing against the boy's back. "It's okay. It's okay. We're going to figure this out." Over his son's shoulder, Alessandro's eyes found Mia's. The suspicion was still there, but now mixed with something else, desperate, dangerous hope. "You're coming with us," he said. "It wasn't a request. And you're bringing that whistle." Mia looked at the door, where the bodyguards now fully blocked her exit. She thought of Danny waiting at home, of the bills on her counter, of her simple, struggling, safe life. That life, she realized, had just ended. The car ride to Alessandro's estate felt like being swallowed by darkness. Mia sat in the back of a black SUV, wedged between expensive leather seats, her phone clutched in her hand. She'd managed one text to her neighbor. "Running late. Emergency at work. Can Danny sleep over?" The response came immediately. "Of course, Han, he's already asleep." Small mercies. Lucas sat across from her beside his father, still clutching a stuffed elephant, his eyes darting between Mia and the whistle she'd been told, to keep visible in her hand. Alessandro hadn't spoken since they left the hospital. He just stared out the window, jaw clenched, one hand resting on his son's shoulder. The silence was suffocating. They drove for 40 minutes into Connecticut's countryside, finally turning through iron gates that opened without anyone pressing a button. Security cameras tracked their movement. The house, no, mansion, emerged from the trees like something out of a Gothic novel. Stone walls, arched windows, and enough square footage to house a small village. Inside, Alessandro said as the car stopped. Mia wanted to argue, to demand answers, to call someone. But who? The police? And say what? That a powerful man insisted she explain a whistle. The foyer was all marble and dark wood. A chandelier hung overhead like a crystal threat. Alessandro led them to a study lined with books that probably cost more than Mia's annual salary. He gestured to a leather chair. Sit. Mia sat. Luca was whisked away by an older woman who appeared from nowhere, signing gently to the boy. He looked back at Mia once before disappearing upstairs. Alessandro poured himself a drink, something amber in a crystal glass. He didn't offer her one. Talk, he said, turning to face her. The whistle. Where did you get it? My grandfather. He died last year. I found it in his belongings. Your grandfather's name? Chun Wei. He was from Sicily originally, moved to Sicily. Alessandro's eyes sharpened. What part? A small village near Palermo. Castellamare, I think? He left when he was young. Alessandro set down his glass with deliberate control. Castellamare del Golfo.
Yes.
Why does that? Do you know what that whistle is made from? Mia looked down at it, the dark wood gleaming under the lamplight. Wood? My grandfather carved things. It was his hobby. Not just wood. Alessandro moved closer, and Mia fought the urge to lean back. My son has been deaf since birth. 5 specialists, 3 countries, experimental treatments that cost more than most people make in a lifetime. Nothing worked. Nothing even came close. Then you walk into a room and blow a piece of carved wood, and he hears. I don't understand what you want me to. I want to know if you're working for someone. His voice dropped to something dangerous. The Morettis. The Russians. Someone who knew about my son and sent you with that whistle to get close to me. Mia's breath caught. I'm a nurse. I work 60-hour weeks to keep my son fed. I don't know any Morettis or Russians. I barely know you except that you donated a hospital wing. Your grandfather. What did he do? He was a woodworker. A carpenter. He made furniture, small carvings. He never talked much about Sicily. He left before the war. Alessandro studied her face like he was reading a document written in a language only he understood. Finally, he pulled out his phone and made a call.
Marco.
I need a full background check. Mia Churn, nurse at Mercy General. Her grandfather, Chun Wei, originally from Castellamare del Golfo. Everything. By morning. He hung up without waiting for a response. You can't just investigate me. I have rights. Everyone has rights until they become a threat to my son. Alessandro's expression softened slightly, a crack in the armor. But I don't think you are. Not intentionally. He sat in the chair opposite her, suddenly looking exhausted. My wife died giving birth to Luca. Hemorrhage. The doctors chose to save the baby. When he was born silent, didn't cry, didn't respond to sound, they said it was oxygen deprivation during delivery. My fault for choosing which one lived, his voice was hollow. I've spent 6 years trying to fix what I broke. And in one night, you did what I couldn't. Mia's anger softened despite herself. I didn't do anything. I don't know how that whistle. I'm going to find out. Alessandro leaned forward. And you're going to help me. I'm offering you a position.
Temporary.
As Luca's caretaker. You'll bring the whistle every day. We'll document his responses. I'll pay you $20,000 a month. Mia's mind went blank. 20. That's not. Plus housing if you need it. Medical coverage. Whatever you require. I have a son.
Danny.
He's 8-inch. Bring him. There's a school nearby, one of the best in the state. I'll cover tuition. It was too much. Too fast. Too good. Why? Mia whispered. Why me? Alessandro's expression hardened again. Because that whistle is the only thing that's ever reached my son. And until I understand what it is and how it works, you're the most valuable person in my world, he paused. Which also makes you the most dangerous to anyone who wants to hurt me. Is this about protection or investigation? Both. Mia looked at the whistle in her palm. Her grandfather's face flashed in her memory, his gentle smile, his careful hands shaping wood. What had he known? What had he left her? 1 month, she said finally. Trial basis. And I need to explain this to Danny somehow. Alessandro nodded. Marco will drive you home tonight. Pack what you need. You start tomorrow. As if on cue, the bodyguard appeared in the doorway. Mia stood, legs shaky. Mr. Vitali. Alessandro, he corrected. If you're going to be in my home, use my name. She nodded and followed Marco out, the whistle heavy in her pocket. Behind her, she heard Alessandro make another call. Get me everything we have on Castellamare del Golfo. Local legends, historical records. Everything. The door closed, and Mia realized she'd just made a deal with the devil. She just hoped the devil kept his promises. The audiology lab was in a building with no sign, accessed through a private elevator that required a keycard. Mia had been at Alessandro's estate for 3 days, and she was still discovering how deep his resources ran. This facility doesn't officially exist, Alessandro explained as they walked down a sterile white corridor, Luca between them holding both their hands. The doctors here work for people who need discretion. You mean criminals? Mia said before she could stop herself. Alessandro's lips twitched. I mean people who value privacy. The lead audiologist was Dr. Patel, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and gentle hands. She knelt to Luca's level, signing, Hello, brave boy. We're going to play some games today. Is that okay? Luca nodded, though his grip on Mia's hand tightened. Over the past 3 days, something unexpected had happened. Luca had attached himself to Mia like a shadow. He waited by her door each morning, helped her make breakfast, and insisted she be present for everything. Alessandro watched this development with an expression Mia couldn't read, something between gratitude and pain. Standard tests first, Dr. Patel explained, leading them to a soundproof booth. Then we'll try with the whistle. For an hour, they ran through traditional hearing tests. Luca showed no response to any frequency, any volume. The graphs on Dr. Patel's screen remained flat as highways. She checked his ears physically, ran tympanometry tests, measured his acoustic reflexes. Structurally perfect, she muttered, frowning at her screen. His ear canals are clear. Eardrums intact. Ossicles functioning. This should work. But it doesn't, Alessandro said flatly.
No.
The hardware is fine. It's like, Dr. Patel paused, choosing words carefully. It's like a perfect radio that isn't tuned to any station. Everything needed to receive the signal is there, but the signal itself isn't connecting. Mia pulled out the whistle. What about now? They positioned Luca back in the booth, electrodes attached to his scalp for an EEG reading. Mia stood outside the glass, the whistle feeling warm in her hand despite the cool air. She brought it to her lips and blew. The sound filled the observation room, that impossible frequency that made her teeth vibrate. Inside the booth, Luca's head turned immediately toward the speaker transmitting the sound. His eyes went wide, bright. My God, Dr. Patel whispered, staring at her monitors. Look at this. The EEG exploded with activity. Waves of neural responses cascaded across the screen in patterns Mia didn't understand, but could tell were significant by the way Dr. Patel's hand shook. His auditory cortex is lighting up like Times Square. But it's not just that. Look at these areas. His sensory processing centers, his motor cortex, even his limbic system. This isn't just hearing. This is full-body response. Alessandro leaned closer. What does that mean? It means this isn't sound processing the way we understand it. Normal sound travels through the ear, converts to electrical signals, processes in specific brain regions. This, she pointed at the screen. This is stimulating everything at once. Like his entire nervous system is receiving the frequency, not just his ears. Is that possible? Mia asked. According to everything I know? No, Dr. Patel replayed the recording, analyzing the waveform. The frequency here, it's oscillating between ranges humans shouldn't be able to hear. Subsonic and ultrasonic simultaneously. It should be impossible to produce from a simple wooden whistle. Alessandro's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened. Marco found something. About the wood. He pulled up an email, turning the screen toward Dr. Patel and Mia. It showed a scanned document, yellowed with age, written in Italian with an English translation below. The resonance trees of Castellamare were said to grow from soil fed by volcanic springs. Local healers carved instruments from their wood, claiming they could tune the bones and reach spirits. The practice was banned by the church in 1847 as heretical. The grove was destroyed in 1923. Destroyed, Mia repeated. But my grandfather's whistle is at least 70 years old based on the wear. Alessandro finished. Which means either the grove wasn't completely destroyed, or someone preserved the wood. Dr. Patel removed the electrodes from Luca, who immediately ran to Mia, signing. Again? Please. Mia looked at Alessandro, who nodded. She blew the whistle once more. This time, Luca didn't just react. He closed his eyes and swayed slightly, like he was feeling music in his entire body. When Mia stopped, he opened his eyes, and they were wet with tears. He signed to his father. It's like colors, but in my bones. Alessandro's carefully maintained composure cracked. He pulled Luca into his arms, burying his face in his son's hair. Dr. Patel quietly excused herself, giving them privacy. Mia started to follow, but Alessandro's voice stopped her. Don't, he looked up, eyes red. You should be here for this. Luca pulled back and signed to both of them. Can we find more? More of the singing wood. Alessandro and Mia exchanged glances. The same thought passed between them, unspoken but clear. Maybe. Alessandro signed slowly. Would you like that? Luca nodded eagerly. The most animated Mia had ever seen him. As they left the lab, Alessandro's phone buzzed again. This time, when he read the message, all warmth drained from his face. What is it? Mia asked. Marco's contact in Italy. Someone's been asking questions about Castellamare. About the resonance trees. He looked at her with cold calculation. Someone knew we'd come looking.
Who?
Alessandro's jaw tightened. The Morettis. They own the land where the grove used to be. The elevator doors opened, and Mia felt the weight of what they'd started settling over her like a shroud. They weren't just chasing a miracle anymore. They were walking into a trap. The social club on Mulberry Street looked like any other Italian restaurant from the outside. Red awning, checkered curtains, a fading sign that read, Lombardi's Est. 1952, but everyone in certain circles knew what happened in the back room after midnight. Vincent Moretti sat at a corner table, spinning an espresso cup between his fingers. He was younger than most men in his position, 38, ambitious, and hungry for the power his older brother refused to share. Around him, smoke curled toward the ceiling while men in expensive suits discussed shipments, territories, and money in coded language. Your brother's getting soft, said Carlo, Vincent's closest associate, a man with scarred knuckles and dead eyes. That mistake with the Brooklyn docks cost us $500,000. Vincent didn't respond. He was watching Dr. Russo across the room, Alessandro Vitali's personal physician, the one who'd treated Luca since birth. The doctor was drunk, laughing too loud, talking too much. Miraculous, I'm telling you. Dr. Russo slurred to the men around him. 6 years of nothing, and suddenly the kid hears something. Vitali's got some nurse with a magic whistle, or some bullshit. Vincent's attention sharpened. He stood smoothly and crossed the room. Dr. Russo, he said, sliding into the booth with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. That's quite a story. Tell me more about this miracle. The doctor's face paled as he recognized Vincent. I shouldn't have said anything. Patient confidentiality. Of course, Vincent signaled for more wine. But among friends, surely? Alessandro Vitali's deaf son can suddenly hear? That is remarkable. The alcohol had loosened the doctor's tongue too much to stop now. Not hear exactly. React. To one specific frequency. From some wooden whistle this woman has. They took the boy to Vitali's private lab. The readings were unprecedented. A wooden whistle, Vincent repeated slowly. And this woman, she works for Alessandro. A nurse. Single mother. Mia something. I think Dr. Russo leaned in conspiratorially. Vitali's obsessed. Paid her $20,000 a month just to stay in his house with the whistle. He's investigating the wood, sent people to Sicily. Vincent's mind raced. Alessandro Vitali investigating something in Sicily. Paying a fortune for a piece of wood. Acting desperate. Desperate men made mistakes. Sicily, Vincent said casually. Where exactly? Castellamare, I heard someone mention. But I don't know more than that, I swear. Vincent patted the doctor's shoulder. Of course. Thank you for the pleasant conversation, Doctor. Perhaps you should head home. You look tired. After the doctor stumbled out, Vincent returned to his table where Carlo waited. Get me everything on Castellamare del Golfo. Land records, property ownership, everything. What are we looking for? Whatever Alessandro Vitali thinks is valuable enough to cure his son. Vincent's eyes gleamed. If he wants it, we take it first. If his son can hear, because of some wood, imagine what we could do with it. Medical applications, military contracts. The Americans pay billions for new technology. You think it's real? Some magic whistle? I think Alessandro Vitali doesn't chase fairy tales. If he believes it's real, that's enough. Vincent pulled out his phone. And there's something else. His son being deaf was his weakness. Everyone knew it. A liability in our world. If Vitali found a way to fix that, he gains strength. We can't let that happen. Carlo nodded slowly. So we find this nurse. This Mia-chan. Not yet. First, we control the source. My idiot brother signed over land development rights in Castellamare 3 years ago, some deal with the local government. I remember because he complained about volcanic soil making construction difficult. Vincent smiled coldly. I bet that's exactly where Vitali is looking. You want to go to Sicily? I want eyes on the ground. Find out what's so special about that area. And Carlo. Vincent's voice dropped. If there's any of this magical wood left, burn it. All of it. Before Vitali gets there. And the woman? We watch her. She's the key to the whistle. When the time is right, we take her. If Vitali wants to play with miracles, he'll learn they come with a price. 3,000 miles away, Alessandro sat in his study, reading Marco's latest report. His hands tightened on the paper. They know, he said quietly. Marco stood by the door, arms crossed. Dr. Russo was seen at Lombardi's last night.
Drunk.
Talking. Fool, Alessandro crumpled the paper. How long before Vincent moves? He's already sent men to Sicily. Our contact saw them asking questions in Castellamare yesterday. Alessandro stood and walked to the window. Outside, he could see Luca and Mia in the garden. She was teaching his son to feel vibrations through a drum, their hands moving in rhythm. Luca was laughing, actually laughing, something Alessandro heard so rarely, it made his chest ache. Double security on the house, Alessandro said. And, get the plane ready. You're going to Sicily? We're going to Sicily. All of us. Alessandro turned from the window. If the Morettis want the grove, they can try to take it from me in person. Boss, taking the woman and your son into hostile territory. Staying here makes them sitting targets. At least in Sicily, I control the variables, Alessandro's voice hardened. And I need to see that grove with my own eyes. If there's more of that wood, if there's a way to help Luca permanently, I'm not letting Vincent Moretti burn it to the ground out of spite. Marco hesitated. The woman, Mia, she doesn't know what she's walking into. Then it's time she learned. Alessandro moved toward the door. We leave tomorrow night. Pack for week. And Marco? Bring everyone we trust. This won't be a peaceful trip. As Alessandro walked toward the garden to tell Mia they were going to Sicily, he didn't see the black sedan parked 3 houses down, or the man inside with a telephoto lens, capturing photos of Mia and Luca through the fence. The photos were already uploading to Vincent Moretti's secure server. The trap was being set, and both sides were walking into it with their eyes wide open. The village of Castellamare del Golfo clung to the Sicilian coast like a barnacle, all sun-bleached stone and narrow streets that smelled of sea salt and wild fennel. Mia hadn't been here since she was 7, and even then, it had been brief, a single summer visiting her grandfather's sister before the old woman passed away. Now, standing in the cobblestone square with Luca's hand in hers and Alessandro's security team fanned out like a small army, she felt like she'd stepped into a memory that didn't quite belong to her. "Your aunt lives where?" Alessandro asked, studying a map on his phone. "Up the hill. The yellow house with the blue shutters. At least, that's what my grandfather told me." Mia shifted the backpack containing the whistle. She hadn't let it out of her sight since they'd boarded Alessandro's private jet. If she's even still alive, she'd be almost 90 now. Danny walked beside them, eyes wide with wonder. The 8-year-old had been surprisingly adaptable about the sudden trip, especially after Alessandro explained there'd be adventure and gelato. Now he pointed at everything: the fishing boats, the medieval castle ruins, the old men playing cards outside a cafe. "Mom, is this where great-grandpa was born?" "Somewhere near here, yes." They climbed the steep street, Marco and 2 other guards trailing behind. Locals watched them pass with a suspicious curiosity reserved for outsiders with too much money and purpose. Alessandro had dressed down, no suit, just dark jeans and a linen shirt, but he still moved with an authority that marked him as dangerous. The yellow house stood at the end of a narrow alley, its blue shutters faded to almost gray. Bougainvilleas spilled over the walls like purple waterfalls. Before Mia could knock, the door opened. The woman who stood there was tiny, bent with age, but her eyes were sharp as broken glass. She looked at Mia for a long moment, then smiled with half her teeth missing. "Chun Wei's granddaughter," she said in Italian. "You have his nose. Zia Giulia?" Mia responded in halting Italian. "You remember me?" "I remember everything." The old woman's gaze shifted to Alessandro, then to the guards, and her smile faded. "And I remember what men like you bring to quiet places. Violence." "We're not here for violence," Alessandro said in perfect Italian. "We're here for information. Information about what my brother left behind." I imagine Giulia stepped aside.
Come?
"But only you 3. The soldiers stay outside. This is a small house with old walls. They'll hear everything anyway." They entered a dim living room that smelled of olive oil and lavender. Religious icons covered every surface. Mary, various saints, a crucifix that looked carved from the same dark wood as Mia's whistle. Giulia gestured for them to sit, then settled into a worn chair with a grunt. Luca stayed close to Mia, signing. "She's very old." Giulia's eyes tracked the movement of his hands. "The boy is deaf." "Yes," Alessandro said quietly. "But not completely." Giulia's gaze fixed on Mia's backpack. "You brought it." "My brother's whistle." Mia's breath caught. "You know about it?" "Child, I helped him carve it." Giulia's weathered hands trembled slightly as she reached for a small wooden box on the side table. She opened it to reveal yellowed photographs. "Wei was 15 when we discovered the grove. I was 12. Our father forbade us from going, said it was cursed land, that the trees sang to the dead." She handed Mia a photograph. It showed 2 teenagers standing before massive trees with twisted black trunks and silver leaves. Even in the faded image, the trees looked otherworldly. "The resonance trees," Giulia continued. "Only 7 left by then. The church had ordered most destroyed centuries ago. Too many healers using them for witchcraft. But our grandfather had planted new ones in secret, in a hidden grove beyond the old volcanic caves." Alessandro leaned forward. Are they still there? Julia's expression darkened. You're not the first to ask that question this week. The Morettis, Alessandro said flatly. 3 men. They came 4 days ago, asking about the grove, about the trees. I told them nothing, but others talked. The old families remember the stories. The Morettis offered money for the location. She spat on her own floor. Blood money. Did anyone tell them? Paolo Carboni, a drunk who needed cash. He led them to the caves yesterday. Julia's eyes glinted. They haven't come back. Mia felt cold despite the warm room. What do you mean? The grove protects itself. Always has. The trees grow where volcanic vents release gas from deep in the earth. Sulfur, carbon dioxide, other things. The air itself can kill you if you don't know the safe paths. Julia smiled grimly. And I learned those paths as children. He carved 7 whistles before we left Sicily, 1 from each tree. I know of only 3 that survived.
Yours.
Mine. She touched the crucifix on the wall. And 1 buried with our father. Can you take us there? Alessandro asked. To the grove.
Why?
So you can harvest the wood like everyone else who's tried. Julia's voice turned sharp. The trees are sacred. They grow from the bones of the earth. They're not meant to be cut down for profit. Not for profit, Alessandro's voice softened. For my son. He nodded to Mia, who pulled out the whistle and blew it gently. The sound filled the small room. Luca's face transformed, his eyes closing as he swayed to the frequency only he could fully perceive. Julia watched, and tears slid down her weathered cheeks. The trees call to him, she whispered. They recognize something in his bones. Something broken that they want to heal. She stood slowly, painfully. I will take you. But you must understand. The grove is not safe. The Morettis may be dead in the caves, or they may be waiting. And the trees themselves, she paused. They don't give their gifts freely. They require something in return.
What?
Mia asked. Julia looked at her with ancient eyes.
Truth.
The trees sing to what's hidden inside you. If you cannot face what they reveal, they'll drive you mad. That's why the church feared them. Alessandro stood. When do we leave?
Dawn.
Before the heat makes the gases worse. Julia moved to a chest and pulled out a faded map. And pray your men are brave. The grove has claimed stronger souls than them. Outside, Marco's phone buzzed with an alert from their Sicily surveillance team. Moretti reinforcements arrived. 12 men.
Armed.
Heading toward volcanic region. The race for the grove had begun. And nobody knew yet what the trees would demand as payment. They left before sunrise, when the Sicilian sky was still bruised purple and the village slept. Julia led them in a battered Fiat up a winding mountain road that turned to dirt, then to nothing at all. Alessandro had insisted Danny stay behind with 2 guards at a secure hotel, and for once, Mia hadn't argued. The volcanic caves appeared like wounds in the hillside, dark openings exhaling cool air that smelled of sulfur and ancient earth. Julia moved with surprising agility for her age, a walking stick in one hand and a flashlight in the other. Stay close, she warned. Step only where I step. The safe path is narrow. Marco and 4 other guards followed, hands near their weapons. Alessandro walked beside Mia, with Luca between them. The boy's eyes were wide but unafraid, his hand gripping the whistle Julia had given him from her own collection, a twin to Mia's, carved with the same swirling patterns. The cave swallowed them whole. Inside, the darkness was absolute except for their flashlights cutting weak beams through the black. Water dripped somewhere distant. The air grew warmer, heavy with minerals and something else, a low vibration Mia felt in her chest before she heard it. The trees, Julia said. They're singing. They know we're coming. 20 minutes of careful walking through narrow passages brought them to a cavern so large their lights couldn't find the ceiling. And there, impossibly, grew the resonance trees. 7 massive trunks, black as obsidian, with silver leaves that seemed to generate their own faint light. Their roots disappeared into cracks in the stone floor where volcanic heat shimmered the air. The trees moved without wind, branches swaying to a rhythm that had nothing to do with nature. Luca gasped, actually made a sound, the first Mia had ever heard from him. He pulled free and ran toward the nearest tree, hands outstretched. Luca, wait. Alessandro lunged after him. The boy pressed his palms against the black bark and went completely still. His eyes rolled back, showing whites.
Luca.
Mia screamed, running forward. But then Luca smiled. His hands began to move against the tree trunk, feeling patterns invisible to everyone else. He turned to his father and signed with trembling fingers. They're talking. All of them. I can hear everything. Alessandro's face went pale. What are they saying? Before Luca could answer, Marco shouted from the cave entrance. Contact. We've got. The gunshot cracked through the cavern like thunder. Marco dove behind a rock formation as bullets sparked off stone. Mia grabbed Luca, pulling him behind one of the massive tree trunks. Alessandro drew a pistol from beneath his jacket, of course he was armed, and returned fire toward the cave mouth. Vitali. Vincent Moretti's voice echoed through the cavern. You're predictable. Did you really think I'd let you have this? You followed us. Alessandro called back, keeping Luca and Mia behind him. Your aunt talked easier than she pretended. Vincent's silhouette appeared at the cave entrance, backlit by dawn. Paolo Carboni wasn't the only one who knew the path. You just needed the right motivation. Giulia spat. I told them nothing. No, but your neighbor did. After we convinced her you'd be safer if we protected you. Vincent's laugh was cold. Now step away from the trees, Alessandro. This is bigger than your deaf son. These trees are worth millions, medical research, military applications. You're thinking too small. These trees aren't leaving this cave, Alessandro said. Then neither are you. More gunfire erupted. Marco and the guards engaged, but they were pinned down. Vincent had brought at least 10 men, positioned at both cave entrances. Mia's heart hammered as bullets whined overhead, striking the trees with sounds like bells ringing. That's when Luca did something impossible. He pulled the whistle from his pocket, stood up despite Mia's attempts to hold him down, and brought it to his lips. Luca, no. Alessandro reached for him. But the boy blew with all his strength. The sound that emerged wasn't just a whistle. It was every whistle, every tree, every frequency, all at once. The cavern itself seemed to scream. The silver leaves on all 7 trees began vibrating so fast they blurred. The volcanic vents beneath them released sudden bursts of gas that rolled across the floor like fog. Vincent's men started choking, stumbling backward. The trees' vibrations intensified, resonating with something deep in the earth. Stalactites began falling from the ceiling, crashing down near the cave entrances. Fall back. Vincent shouted, his voice panicked. Fall back. But the cave wasn't done. The ground trembled. One of the volcanic vents near the entrance erupted with superheated steam, cutting off Vincent's main escape route. His men scattered, some retreating deeper into other tunnels, others trying to climb over fallen rocks. In the chaos, Marco grabbed Giulia and pulled her to safety behind Alessandro's position. The old woman was laughing and crying at once. The trees remember, she gasped. They remember Way. They remember us. They recognized the boy. The vibration stopped as suddenly as they'd started. Luca lowered the whistle, swaying on his feet. Alessandro caught him before he fell. Is he? Mia started. Breathing. Just exhausted, Alessandro looked at the cave entrance where Vincent's retreat had left 3 men unconscious from the gas. The others fled. We need to move.
Now.
Before they regroup. Wait, Giulia said, hobbling to the nearest tree. She pulled out a small saw from her pack, ancient, clearly made for this purpose. If we leave now, they'll come back. They'll destroy everything. What are you doing? Mia asked. Taking what we need. The trees offer, see? Giulia pointed to where Luca's whistle had touched the bark. A branch had already begun to crack naturally, offering itself. They know why we're here. But we must be fast. Marco kept watch while Julia carefully harvested 3 branches from different trees, each separating cleanly as though the trees were helping. She wrapped them in cloth with reverent hands. "This is enough," she said. "Enough to help the boy. Maybe others. But we leave the trees standing. They must survive." An explosion echoed from somewhere in the tunnel network, Vincent's men trying to blast their way back through the collapsed entrance.
Time's up, Marco said.
"Boss, there's a second exit. Narrow, but we can make it." They ran through passages Julia navigated by memory, the old woman moving faster than seemed possible. Behind them, shouts and gunfire echoed, but distance made them abstract, unreal. They emerged on the far side of the mountain just as the sun broke the horizon, painting the Mediterranean gold and crimson. Their cars were a mile away, hidden in an olive grove. Lucas stirred in his father's arms, signing weakly. The trees said thank you for listening. Alessandro's voice was rough. What else did they say? Lucas' expression turned serious beyond his years. That mom needs to hear them too. That she's carrying something broken that they can fix. Mia's blood went cold. She thought of her grandfather, of the secrets he'd never told, of the whistle she'd carried without understanding. "What does that mean?" she whispered. But Julia was already looking at her with knowing, sad eyes. "It means," the old woman said gently, "that your grandfather wasn't just a woodcarver. And your family's connection to these trees goes deeper than you know." Behind them, the mountain rumbled. Whether from Vincent's explosives or the tree's anger, no one could say. They had the wood. But the real revelations were just beginning. The safe house sat on a cliff overlooking the Tyrrhenian Sea, isolated enough that the only sounds were waves and seagulls. Alessandro had owned it for years, a place to disappear when the world got too dangerous. Now, with Vincent Moretti's men scouring Sicily for them, it was the only sanctuary left. Luca had fallen into a deep sleep the moment they arrived, exhausted from whatever the trees had pulled from him. Julia tended to him, humming old songs while she kept watch. Marco and the guards patrolled the perimeter, weapons ready. That left Alessandro and Mia alone on the terrace as sunset painted the sky in shades of blood orange and violet. "Your son said something in the cave," Alessandro began, his voice quiet. "About you carrying something broken." Mia's hands tightened on the terrace railing. The Mediterranean stretched before them, infinite and indifferent. "I don't know what he meant. Don't you?" Alessandro turned to face her. For once, his carefully maintained mask had slipped. He looked exhausted, almost vulnerable. "I've spent 3 days watching you with my son. The way you flinch when people raise their voices. How you check exits in every room. You're running from something, Mia. Just like I've been running from what happened to Luca. That's different. You lost your wife. You." "I kill my wife," the words came out flat, brutal. "That's the truth I've never said out loud. The doctors gave me a choice during the delivery. Her heart was failing. They could save her or the baby. Not both," his voice cracked. "I chose Luca. I chose to let her die." Mia's breath caught. "Alessandro." She begged me. With her last conscious words, she begged me to save her. And I looked at the monitor showing my son's heartbeat, and I said no. He turned back to the sea. When they told me he was deaf, I thought it was punishment. God's way of showing me I made the wrong choice. That I traded a full life for a broken 1 inch. "Luca's not broken," Mia said fiercely. "I know that now. But for 6 years, every time I looked at him, I saw my failure. Not a son, a reminder of what I destroyed to bring him into the world." Alessandro's hands clenched into fists. "I funded that hospital wing hoping it would balance the scales. I hired specialists thinking I could fix what I broke. But nothing worked. Nothing reached him. Until the whistle. Until you." Alessandro looked at her. "You see him as a person, not a problem to solve. You don't flinch from his silence or treat it as a disability. You just see him the way his mother would have." Tears burned Mia's eyes. "She would have been better than me. Maybe. But she's gone, and you're here, and my son trusts you more than he's ever trusted anyone except me. Maybe more, he paused. So, I need to know what you're running from, Mia. Because whatever happens next with the Morettus, with these trees, I need to know you're with us completely. No more secrets. The words came before she could stop them, pulled out by the raw honesty in his confession. My grandfather didn't just leave Sicily. He fled. Mia's voice shook. I found letters after he died. He was supposed to marry a girl from Castellamare, an arranged marriage to unite families. But he loved someone else. A woman from the Moretti family. Alessandro went very still. When he refused the marriage, they came for him. Beat him so badly, he nearly died. The woman he loved, Bianca Moretti, she helped him escape. Got him on a boat to America. But her family found out. Mia's tears spilled over. They killed her. Made it look like an accident, but everyone knew. My grandfather spent his whole life carrying that guilt. He carved those whistles from the resonance trees because he believed if he could make something beautiful from that cursed place, maybe her death would mean something. The Morettus. Alessandro breathed. That's why Vincent is so obsessed with the Grove. It's not just about money or power. It's revenge, Mia finished. Generational revenge against my family. When Vincent's men started asking about the trees, someone must have remembered the old story, realized who I was. And now you're with me, Alessandro Vitali. The Morettus' biggest rival. Alessandro's laugh was bitter. We've painted targets on both our backs. They stood in silence as the sun sank below the horizon, leaving them in blue twilight. I should leave, Mia said finally. Take Danny and disappear. It's what my grandfather did. Is that what you want? I want my son safe. I want Luca to have a chance at a normal life. Her voice broke. I want to stop running. I'm so tired of running. Alessandro moved closer, and for the first time since she'd met him, he reached out and took her hand. His touch was warm, solid, real. Then stay, he said. Help me fight. The wood from the Grove. Dr. Patel thinks she can synthesize the frequency, create a device that helps Luca hear permanently. But it'll take time. And the Morettus won't stop coming. Why do you care if I stay? You could protect Luca without me. Because my son needs you. And because Alessandro's jaw tightened. Because I've spent 6 years blaming myself, closing myself off, building walls so high no one could reach me. Then you walked into that hospital with a whistle and tore them all down. You made me remember what it feels like to hope. Mia looked up at him, this dangerous man with the careful hands and haunted eyes, and realized she was falling. Had been falling since the moment she saw him hold his son in that cave, protecting him with his own body. The trees, she whispered. Luca said they wanted to heal something broken in me. Maybe this is what they meant. Learning to stay instead of run. Or maybe, Alessandro said softly, they knew I needed healing too. And they sent you to do it. Inside, Luca called out, not with his voice, but by tapping on the window in the rhythm Mia had taught him. Their signal for come back. Alessandro and Mia turned together to see the boy signing through the glass. Stay. Both of you. Please stay. And in that moment, overlooking the sea that had separated and connected their families for generations, they made a silent promise. They would stop running. They would fight. And whatever the Morettus brought, they would face it together. The question was whether that would be enough. 3 weeks later, New York felt like a different world. The morning sun cut through Alessandro's penthouse windows, illuminating the laboratory equipment that had transformed his formal dining room into something out of a science fiction film. Dr. Patel worked alongside 2 acoustic engineers, surrounded by computers analyzing the resonance, Wood's frequency patterns. The branches Julia had given them sat in a sealed container, their dark grains still seeming to pulse with internal light. We're close, Dr. Patel said, adjusting her glasses as she studied the waveform on her screen. The frequency oscillates in a pattern that mimics neural timing. It's not just sound, it's a language the nervous system understands instinctively. Alessandro watched from the doorway, Mia beside him. They'd fallen into an easy partnership over the past weeks. Strategy meetings that turned into late-night conversations, shared meals with the boys, moments where their hands would brush and neither would pull away. How close? Alessandro asked. We can begin the first treatment today. But Alessandro, Dr. Patel's expression turned serious. This isn't a cure. It's more like
tuning.
We'll use modified hearing aids that emit the resonance frequency constantly, training Luca's auditory cortex to process normal sound. It could take months, maybe years. But it will work. The simulations are promising. His brain is already responding to the whistles. This just amplifies and refines that connection. She held up a small device, no bigger than a standard hearing aid. We've embedded microscopic shavings of the resonance, wood in the circuitry. It should maintain the frequency indefinitely. Mia squeezed Alessandro's hand. Let's tell him. They found Luca in the courtyard with Danny, both boys playing with a soccer ball. Over the past weeks, they'd become inseparable. Danny teaching Luca the games hearing kids played, Luca teaching Danny to see the world through different senses. Luca, Alessandro signed. Dr. Patel is ready. The boy's face lit up with hope and fear in equal measure. He signed back. Will it hurt?
No, Piccolo.
You'll just wear these. Mia showed him the modified hearing aids. Like glasses, but for your ears. Luca nodded slowly, then looked at Danny. His friend gave him 2 thumbs up. The procedure took less than an hour, fitting the devices, calibrating the frequency, making micro-adjustments based on Luca's neural feedback. When Dr. Patel finally activated them, everyone held their breath. Luca's eyes went wide. His hands flew to the devices, touching them gently. Alessandro knelt before his son.
Luca, can you?
I hear you, Luca whispered, his voice rusty from disuse, but unmistakably clear. Papa, I hear you. Alessandro's composure shattered. He pulled Luca into his arms, shoulders shaking with 6 years of grief, guilt, and relief finally released. Say it again. Please, say it again. I hear you, Papa. I hear you. Mia turned away, tears streaming down her face. Danny hugged her waist, crying too, though he didn't fully understand why. Dr. Patel quietly documented everything, her own eyes wet behind her glasses. That afternoon, while Luca explored the new world of sound, laughing at Danny's jokes, listening to music, asking what every noise was, Alessandro's phone rang. It was Marco. Boss, we've got movement. NYPD just raided 3 Moretti holdings. Vincent's been arrested. Alessandro's eyebrows rose. On what charges? Illegal land acquisition in Sicily, among other things. Seems someone sent the authorities detailed documentation of property fraud, environmental violations, and connections to the men who died in the volcanic caves. Marco paused. Anonymous source. Very thorough. Alessandro glanced at Mia, who was innocently watching the boys play. She'd spent considerable time on her laptop the past 2 weeks, claiming she was organizing family history. How thorough? Alessandro asked. Thorough enough that the Italian government is reclaiming the land around the grove, designating it as a protected archaeological site. No development allowed. Marco's voice held amusement. Whoever compiled this file knew exactly what evidence would hurt the Morettis most. Interesting, Alessandro said mildly. Keep me updated. He approached Mia as she stood watching their sons. You wouldn't know anything about anonymous tips to the authorities, would you? Mia's smile was innocent. Me? I'm just a nurse. A nurse who happens to have extensive documentation of her grandfather's letters. Letters that mention the Morettis' illegal activities in Castellamare dating back decades. My grandfather was very detailed in his correspondence, Mia agreed. It seemed a shame to let all that information go to waste. Alessandro laughed, genuinely laughed for the first time in years. You're terrifying, you know that. I learned from the best. She turned to face him. Besides, you said we fight together. I just chose a different weapon. Remind me never to underestimate you. Too late for that. As evening fell, they gathered in the courtyard. Alessandro, Mia, Luca, Danny, and the household staff who'd become family over the past weeks. Marco brought out wine and sparkling cider. Someone turned on music. Luca heard his first song. He grabbed his father's hand, then Mia's, pulling them together. "Dance," he said, the words still unpracticed but perfect. "The trees said families should dance." "The trees said that?" Alessandro asked, amused. "They show me things." In dreams, Luca's expression turned solemn beyond his years. "They said Mama would be happy. That you finally stopped being sad." Alessandro's throat tightened. He looked at Mia, this fierce, single mother who'd walked into his life with a wooden whistle and torn down every wall he'd built. "Dance with me?" he asked softly. Mia took his hand. "Only if you promise not to step on my feet." "No promises." They swayed to the music while the boys played, and Marco pretended not to watch. The city stretched around them, dangerous, complicated, full of threats that would never fully disappear. But here, in this moment, they had something more powerful than any weapon in Alessandro's arsenal. They had family, found and forged and fought for. Luca's laughter rang out, the sound Alessandro had waited 6 years to hear, as Danny whispered something ridiculous in his ear. The resonance with devices glinted in the fading light, still singing their impossible frequency, still connecting the boy to a world he'd been locked out of. "What are you thinking?" Mia asked against Alessandro's shoulder. "That my wife would have liked you. That you gave my son something I never could. The belief that being different isn't being broken. You gave him that too. You just needed help seeing it. We make a good team." "We do." Mia pulled back to look at him. "So what happens now?" Alessandro glanced at Marco, who nodded slightly. The threat wasn't over. It never would be in his world. But it was managed. Controlled. "Now," Alessandro said, pulling Mia closer, "we live. We protect what we've built. And we teach our sons that family isn't about blood or hearing or perfection. It's about choosing to stay when running would be easier." "Your grandfather would have approved," Mia whispered. "Yours too, I think." Above them, the first stars appeared in the New York sky. Somewhere in Sicily, the resonance trees still sang in their volcanic grove, protected now by laws and secrets. And in a small yellow house with blue shutters, Julia raised a glass of wine to ghosts and whispered her thanks. The whistle had done its work. But the real magic, the kind that healed broken hearts and built families from strangers, that was all human. That was all them. And it was just beginning.